But how safe are they in a crash? Earlier this year, we took a good look at SUVs in a special test and found
they're rough and rugged, but they're not as safe as people generally perceive them to be.
only 2 out of the 6 tested got a good rating. Tonight, what about luxury cars and those large family sedans? They're bigger than most cars, but do they protect you any better?
Yes, larger cars are safer, but not all are equal.
And Dateline...
Your styling, performance, and maybe a little extra legroom. You may also expect an extra measure of safety. But do you get it? Well, the answer is yes and no. As these recent crash tests show, the large size of luxury cars and family sedans can actually contribute to the seriousness of an accident. Even if you don't drive a big car, what you're about to see could affect the decisions you make on the road and in the showroom. Here's Chief Consumer Correspondent Lee Thompson with a Dateline Consumer Alert.
The Cadillac Seville, for years one of America's most popular luxury cars, the essence of Cadillac tradition and style. But 2 years ago, General Motors, the maker of the Seville, got a big wake-up call. During a crash test conducted by the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety, the dummy's head whacked against the Seville's window frame. And had it been a real person, the driver's right leg would have been shattered. The $42,000 1997 Seville turned out to be the lowest rated luxury car ever tested by the Insurance Institute.
Well, we were certainly disappointed. An expensive car like the Cadillac Seville, we felt should have performed a lot better than it did.
Brian O'Neill is president of the Institute.
See what the numbers look like.
It represents large insurance companies whose goal is to reduce the dollar amount of damage claims filed by car owners. It does that by running a series of crash tests in this state-of-the-art testing facility. It's intended to show manufacturers the flaws in their designs. O'Neill says after that 97 Cadillac Seville test, GM went back to the drawing board and redesigned the car for the 2000 model year.
And we said, well, we're going to test the new version and see how well it does perform.
It's a rematch pitting the prestigious Cadillac Seville against one of the toughest auto crash tests.
Main power is on.
In a moment, we'll tell you how the Cadillac performs, as well as new models from Buick, Chrysler, Dodge, Chevy, and Lexus.
Dummy is on.
Remember, all these cars meet or exceed government safety standards. But the Institute runs an important crash test the government doesn't do. The government tests cars head-on into a flat wall at 35 miles per hour. The force spread evenly across the front of the car.
It's set up to be a very demanding test of the restraint system, the seat belts and the airbags.
But the Institute does it differently. It crashes cars at 40 miles per hour where cars end up hitting like this, driver to driver, off-center. O'Neill says the Institute's test more closely resembles many real-world accidents. It's called an offset test.
This test is a very demanding test of the vehicle structure.
For this round of testing, the Institute crashed 7 cars, 4 considered large family sedans, the others luxury cars. Most people assume that bigger is better when it comes to car safety, and most often it is. But in crash tests, the heavier the car, the more crash energy that has to be absorbed. So this offset test is actually more demanding on heavier cars.
What we're looking at in this program is among large cars, large and luxury cars, are there differences in the performance? Because we find this in almost every size group. That yes, larger cars are safer, but not all are equal.
The Institute buys all its cars right off dealers' lots. Dateline has no say on how they're chosen, tested, or evaluated. The Institute rates them as good, acceptable, marginal, or poor. We began by testing the 4 family cars. They range in price from $22,000 to $31,000. The first family car is the brand new Buick LeSabre. It's also sold as the Pontiac Bonneville. Now, don't let that mangled grille mislead you. Remember, it's the dummy inside that matters. That's why engineers are called in to assess the damage.
I don't see any entrapment. That's a good sign.
And download the injury data from the sensors in the dummy.
So far, the head and the right leg look fine.
The readings show no major injuries to the head, neck, chest, or legs. Watch the Institute's slow motion film. See how the front end of the LeSabre, the so-called crumple zone, takes the brunt of the impact. As a result, the safety cage around the driver stays intact.
So the space for the driver to survive in is largely preserved.
The Buick LeSabre gets the Institute's highest rating. Good. Next up is the Chevrolet Impala, redesigned for the 2000 model year.
The upper part of the compartment looks very good.
Dummy readings show some possible leg injuries, but nothing major. Dummy movement has been well controlled.
When the safety cage stays together, the dummy can go forward into the airbag, absorb some of the energy, be gently cushioned, and then settle back into the seat.
The Chevrolet Impala also gets the Institute's highest rating. Good. The third car in the family category is the Dodge Intrepid, also sold as the Chrysler Concorde.
Well, obviously we've got a lot of deformation and separation here, so that's troubling.
There's trouble below as well. Dummy readings show the possibility of fractures for both legs. And the steering wheel has moved the most of any car tested this round.
Watch this shot and look what happens to the steering wheel. The steering wheel gets driven upwards, and you see you get this violent head movement.
Even though no serious head injuries are recorded on this dummy, the Intrepid gets marked down for poor control of the dummy and those potential leg injuries. The Dodge Intrepid gets the Institute's second lowest rating, marginal. The final large family car is the Chrysler LHS.
This was the worst performer.
Dummy readings show a broken left leg and an injured right one, but something else has O'Neill far more concerned.
A serious problem with this vehicle was the airbag. It fired very late. This is the steering wheel, and the driver's head actually contacts the rim of the steering wheel because the airbag fired so late.
Dummy readings show a possible concussion, maybe even a skull fracture. Life-threatening injuries.
This late firing means that the head is here, it actually contacted the steering wheel rim, and there's the real possibility as this bag inflates of causing not only a head injury but potentially a neck injury as it inflates up around the driver's head-neck region.
O'Neill says the problem apparently lies with the sensor system which fires the airbags. That late-firing airbag along with head and leg injuries result in the Chrysler LHS receiving the Institute's lowest rating, poor. Brian, people who've bought Chrysler LHSs are going to look at this and go, oh my God.
Well, we can tell them that the airbags are probably going to function well in most crashes. They could fire late in some crashes. That makes it even more important to be sitting back, properly buckled up, so that you are initially away from the airbag.
But in a letter to Dateline, Daimler Chrysler said the LHS's poor rating is not representative of real-world results. In fact, Daimler Chrysler sent us this videotape of its own offset tests using the same crash speed the Institute uses. But instead of crashing into a barrier, the automaker ran 2 car-to-car tests, replicating the type of real-world collision the Insurance Institute attempts to simulate. In both tests, Daimler Chrysler says the airbags deployed 5 times faster than in the Institute's test, resulting in less severe injuries. Because the front of the Institute's barrier is soft and deformable, company engineers say the sensors are initially misreading that crash as a low-speed collision, thus the late firing. But O'Neill says most airbags in other cars tested by the Institute do fire in time. However, he does agree with Daimler Chrysler's decision to not adjust the sensors just to do well in the Institute's test.
If they adjust the sensor to get better performance in this crash, They are concerned that they're going to have airbags deploying in some low-speed crashes where we don't need airbags, and they could potentially do some harm.
Next, the Institute tested the 3 large luxury cars. They range in price from $35,000 to almost $50,000. Let's begin with the Buick Park Avenue. List price close to $35,000.
So both feet, from what I can see, look reasonably good in their positions anyway.
The Park Avenue turns out to be one of the best performing luxury cars ever tested by the Institute. No major injuries recorded by the dummy.
And they look okay.
Basically, this compartment is stayed together. There's no major buckling down here. The energy has all been absorbed in this front crumple zone here. A real person in a crash like this could have walked away from the accident, shaken up, frightened, but essentially uninjured.
Remarkable.
It's not remarkable, it should be this way.
The Buick Park Avenue gets the Institute's highest rating, good. The second luxury car is the Lexus GS 400 with a much steeper price tag nearing $50,000.
One of the things we saw in this test is that the dummy goes through the airbag, it makes contact with the steering wheel, and it also makes contact with the roof rail. But these were minor contacts, not significant, not injury producing.
The Institute rates the Lexus GS 400 a notch below the Buick Park Avenue on safety. But with no major injuries, the GS 400 also receives the Institute's highest rating, good. The last car in the luxury category is the 2000 Cadillac Seville. General Motors says it has reinforced the structure around the safety cage to offer more protection in an offset crash. Did it work? Let's see. This 2000 Cadillac Seville cost $48,600.
We don't see any major collapse, no buckling. This is all held together very well. No major buckling here.
The outer structure looks good.
What did you see, Mike?
Well, we're just finishing up going through all the data, and so far everything looks really good.
No injuries. It's a dramatic turnaround for GM and the Seville in just 2 years.
The good, strong safety cage in this new Cadillac means that the dummy is much better protected. We don't see the dummy's head coming down here. The damage is largely confined to the front end, the crumple zone. In fact, if I stand here and you look at this section, except for the deployed airbag and the cracked windshield, you could almost conclude that this vehicle has not been in a crash. The occupant compartment is intact, hardly damaged.
The Cadillac Seville goes from a poor all the way to the Institute's highest rating, good. So to recap, in the large family car category, the Buick LeSabre and the Chevrolet Impala received the Institute's top rating, good. The Dodge Intrepid received a marginal rating, and the Chrysler LHS was rated poor. In the luxury car category, the Buick Park Avenue, Cadillac Seville, and Lexus GS 400 were all rated good. Even though the offset test is more demanding on large cars, as a group they do perform much better across the board than small cars.
You get the new safety features appearing in luxury cars, and these features trickle down to the less expensive cars over time.
Why is that?
It's always the case that you start off with new features being more expensive, and therefore they show up in the cars where cost is less of an issue.
In a letter to Dateline, General Motors, maker of the Buick LeSabre, Park Avenue, Chevy Impala, and Cadillac Seville, said it does not believe the Institute's ratings provide an accurate estimate of a vehicle's overall safety in real-world driving. GM calls the Institute's crash test a very rare real-world event, however acknowledges it's pleased with the performance of its cars. Toyota, maker of the Lexus GS 400, said there are limitations to the conclusions that can be drawn from any one test, and both companies say they address a wide range of crash conditions in their own testing. O'Neill says the combination of industry testing and the Institute's test means the good performers are beginning to outnumber the poor ones.
There's no question that more and more cars have better structural designs. Vehicles are getting safer and safer because of this program.
You can find the complete results of the Insurance Institute's crash test, as well as those of the government's crash tests on